Welcome everybody to another episode of the Shelby County Football Show alongside Tyler Rayleigh. I'm Andrew Simonson. Alec Etheridge out for the week, but we have a great lineup here to get to as we get to the playoffs of the high school football season. The regular season is now in the books. We've got a big slate of playoff matchups to get to you. First, Tyler, what are some of your thoughts after the end of the regular season?
You know, I thought that many of our teams, Andrew, played really well throughout the season. We showed a lot of dominance throughout the county. And, I mean, you saw a lot of big games last week, even non-region play. Teams like Oak Mountain who aren't even going to be in the playoffs this year, they had a shutout win over Chelsea. You had Pelham go up to Fort Payne, put up a really good fight last week. And then Briarwood, you know, they had some struggles as well. So you had both sides of the needle last week, but I think overall the county has a lot to be happy with this regular season.
Yeah, we've got a ton of teams making the playoffs this year. Only 4 teams will be missing the playoffs across both 11-man and 8-man. We had to say goodbye to Chelsea, Oak Mountain, Calera, and Montevallo. We do want to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Montevallo Main Street, because they've got plenty of great things to offer throughout the holiday season, and they've done great things for us as 2-year sponsors of the Shelby County Football Show. So make sure that you get down there this holiday season and spend some of your time at Montevallo Main Street and all those amazing businesses and festivals that they have going on there. But we had a really great week last week overall. Some blowout wins from Spain Park, Helena, and Shelby County. All 3 of those teams will be in great playoff matchups this week. And then we've got some good matchups just across the board as well. And that includes our game of the week this week here at Spain Park as they take on the McAdory Yellow Jackets. Phenomenal matchups across the schedule. So let's go ahead and get to it. Our game of the week this week is Spain Park and McAdory. Well, the playoffs are finally here, and the Spain Park Jaguars are hosting a playoff game for the second straight season. It's going to come right here at Bob Finley Field this Friday night as they take on a very hot McAdory Yellow Jackets team. Tyler, this is a McAdory side that you got to see in person last week. I've kind of been high on this team throughout the year, but they've been a little bit mixed throughout the year, just 7-2 overall. They have a common opponent in Helena, which McAdory beat 34-21, and Spain Park beat 38-14. And they have 2 losses on the year. That is why they're in the 3 seed. They lost to Bessemer City, and they lost to Hueytown. That is why they are here at 7-2 and playing another 2-loss team in the Spain Park Jaguars. So Tyler, like I said, you saw this team against Briarwood this past week. What were your thoughts overall?
Well, I thought they could move the ball really well. They've got a lot of dynamic players on the offensive side. They've got a really awesome trio over there in Justin Patton at quarterback, Kawan Johnson at running back, and Carter Fagan at wide receiver. 3 guys you cannot sleep on at all in this game. I think the Spain Park defense is going to have a challenge on their hands with this McAdory offense because they have the ability to move the ball. And if Spain Park can't go on the outside and stop this team, they're exposed up the middle as well, and Kawan Johnson can break through that line. This McAdory team is very hard to stop, and I think if they get going offensively, it could be a long night for Spain Park.
And that's why I think that Spain Park's biggest weapon in this matchup is that second-level defense. You look at that linebacker core, guys like E.J. Curley and J.D. Bonamy who have been making plays throughout the season, been able to close space and do great things there as well. But it's also that secondary as well. Guys like Joe Cross, guys like Carter Holloway, they've really made some big plays, caused some turnovers even at different points of the season, gotten some pass breakups as well. I really like this defense overall, and I think it's one of the more underrated parts of this team because you just look at this offense and it continues to attract big numbers and for good reasons, and the big attention that comes along with it also for good reasons. But overall, the defense has done its job throughout much of the year. They're coming off of a hot stretch within these past 5 games that have gotten Spain Park to this point to now where they carry in a long winning streak into this matchup against McAdory. But I really also like this McAdory defense overall. They're a solid group overall. They allow just 19.6 points on defense, but there are some worry signs to point out about this defense. They allow quite a few points against quality opponents. 21 points in their wins, their win against Helena, I should say, and their loss against Bessemer City. And then in their win against Brookwood, allowing 27 points to a Brookwood team that does have an improved offense, but overall struggled throughout most of the season. And then in their loss to Hueytown, giving up 43 points on the defensive side. I think Spain Park definitely a step above all of those teams. But this could be a really high-scoring game. Tyler, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it.
Well, I do think it's a shootout. I think you've got two really high-powered offenses who are both going to be hard to stop. But like you mentioned, Andrew, this Spain Park offense, they're scoring more than 40 points in 5 straight games. I mean, that is a recipe for success if you're Tim Vakakis' squad, but they cannot start slow. And we've seen that in a couple times the last few weeks, and that could come back to hurt them, especially now in the postseason. You're facing a high caliber of an opponent, and really all these teams are here for a reason. So if Spain Park is going to start slow, they better be ready to come back and make themselves known there in the second half. I just think it's going to be a very good shootout. We're in for an entertaining matchup here.
Yeah, obviously the Chilton County game a couple weeks ago was kind of the outlier. They kind of had their way with the Tigers throughout that matchup, but Gardendale, especially last week, giving up that early touchdown to the Rockets and then having to close out in dominant fashion from there. I think Vakakis wanted to see a little bit more of a complete performance from his team, and especially, like you said, against a McAdory team that can just come out of the gate, punch you in the mouth, and cause you to play a little bit of a dogfight throughout the matchup. So that brings us to our Wayne's Pest Control pick. Make sure you go search Wayne's Pest Control on all your favorite search engines and on social media as well. They're going to get your pest control needs taken care of, especially as we get into the winter months. You might get those pests creep into your house. You'll want to make sure that you have Wayne's on speed dial and make sure that you can get to them whenever you need them. So Tyler, who are you going in this matchup?
I think it's going to be very close. Like we said, a very good shootout on our hands, but I do think Vakakis has enough experience in the playoffs right now to be able to handle this McAdory team. I think this place is going to be packed. I think home field advantage is why this team wins, and that passing attack with Brock Bradley, Mason McClure, and Ken Arrigo, it's going to be very difficult to stop with this McAdory defense.
Yeah, you can't overlook home field advantage and the offense for both of these teams because it's been, especially for Spain Park, the reason why it's been in this position right now. But I want to turn to the defense as well, because I think whoever makes the most stops and gets the most turnovers is going to win this football game, and that's why I think Spain Park gets it done. I think it's going to be a very entertaining and a very high-scoring game, like Tyler said, but overall, Spain Park has the tools and the weapons to get the defensive plays done. I think they get past this matchup and then go into what could be a very, very difficult rematch down on the road against Saraland next week. So big opportunity for the Spain Park Jaguars to get back into the second round for the second straight year. We'll see if it happens here at Bob Finley Field. Well, the Thompson Warriors now rolling into the playoffs where they've done their damage over the last few years. These Warriors are entering the playoffs for the second straight year with a 7-3 record. A little bit of disrespect coming the Warriors' way within the last few weeks, given some of their performances over the course of the season, but now they step into a rematch against the Carver Wolverines out of Montgomery. This was a 37-6 win for Thompson within the first week of the season that got us kicked off here within Shelby County. Thompson scored 37 unanswered points and 31 in the second half to really pull away and put themselves in a good position to win that football game. And Carver has remained a good team, Tyler, throughout this year, sitting at 5-4, like I said, on the year. They also have a bye from last week. They canceled their game against Saraland to get themselves a little bit of extra breathing room between their last matchup a couple of weeks ago and this matchup here against Thompson. Right back at the scene of the crime where it happened on week 1. Tyler, what have you seen out of this team overall, and do you think it could play out any differently?
I think Thompson's in a position where, like we've said, it has been, embarrassing a little the last couple weeks. It's not been up to the Thompson standard. They've played like an okay team, not a great team that they are. But the thing about this Carver team right now that they're facing is that they've lost their last 3 games against Auburn, Central Phoenix City, and Opelika. And that's in the regular season. They come off a bye. It's just a really questionable right now where this Carver team is sitting at. I still think players like Zion Crumpton that they have are very dangerous to defend against, but Thompson is really going to have to come out in stride with their defensive performance. They don't need to have Mark Freeman getting them motivated in the second half to win this ball game. They need to come out firing because this Carver team is just as liable to get you through the air deep and on the ground as any team in the state that's challenging Thompson.
Yeah, I'm not worried about either of the offenses in this matchup. Both of them have been very strong throughout the season. You look at Carver overall, they're scoring 31.2 points per game. They dropped a 50 spot on Dothan and got 49 against Enterprise. And then even in that loss to Central Phoenix City where they gave up 58 points, they scored 35 points on Central Phoenix City overall in that matchup. So a very high scoring shootout overall. But it's been the Warriors defense and a Carver defense as well that have been worrisome throughout most of the year. It just hasn't really been able to get going to the extent that the Warriors want. Obviously, they've been able to get a couple of wins, and then they also pushed Hoover right into the end. But some lapses throughout all of those games definitely caused some problems against very good teams, though. Teams that I think are better than Carver-Montgomery overall. I would argue Prattville is a step above that as well with how good that they've done within their first year under Bobby Carr. But this is a Carver-Montgomery team that I think is going to ask some questions of this Thompson defense. And the question is, are they going to be able to keep it up for the entirety of this matchup, continuously get stops, and look like they did in week one? Because I would argue they've regressed since then. But Tyler, this is a Thompson team that loves to flip the switch in the playoffs. Do you believe that happens?
I do. I think this is their environment where they thrive, and I think what's special about what Mark Freeman does in the playoffs is that he finds new ways to win. This Carver team, the thing about this matchup that's really tough is you're going to have to find new things to throw at them from week one. But the good thing is it was week one when you played them. So you have an entire new playbook ready. You have the ability to think up some new schemes, get ready to throw things at this Carver defense that nobody really knows about. And I think that's where Mark Freeman thrives. I think that's where this Thompson team thrives. And again, a home game at Warrior Stadium, you can't really beat it. I think it's going to be a cruising win, but I think it's going to be closer than week one.
So your Wayne's Pest Control pick will be the Thompson Warriors.
Yes, it will.
All right. We definitely want to make sure that we shout out Wayne's Pest Control for sponsoring the Thompson Warriors all season long, but I'm very much like Tyler. I think the offense opens up and finds a really successful night, and that paves the way to a big victory here. I do still think that Thompson's going to be a little bit shaky within this matchup, but we know, especially with the bye week last week, just the concept of rest after 10 weeks, I think, will really help this team, as well as most of these teams had their bye weeks earlier on in the season. But I do think that Thompson is going to come into this playoff game motivated and ready to make a statement. Obviously, they know that they made that statement in week one. I think they know now that it's the playoffs, it's win or go home. These are matchups that you cannot let get off your radar, especially with a gauntlet of a road coming up. Mary Montgomery likely coming next week, and then Central Phoenix City possibly coming within the semifinals, and that's before you even get to the state title game. But all that doesn't matter unless you win the first round matchup, and I think that Thompson approaches it with the right intensity to get it done. Should be a fun one out at Warrior Stadium as we commence the first round of the Class 7A playoffs. Well, the Briarwood Lions are going to be entering the playoffs for the first time in a couple of years, and they will be doing so as region champions, sitting at 5-5 overall on the year after a difficult non-region schedule, but they take care of business within region play. They win that tiebreaker over Ramsey, and they get it done to make sure that they can get into the playoffs as that top seed with a home game now against the Leeds Green Wave. And just like our last matchup that we talked about, Thompson and Carver, this was a rematch as well, because you look at these two teams, they met in week 6 during that non-region week, and it was a 29-28 win for Leeds over Briarwood, over there at Homer Smile Stadium. A little bit of a change in venue. We're going to be at Lions Pride Stadium on Friday night as the Lions and the Green Wave face off. I was at that game earlier on in the season, and it was definitely an interesting matchup between these two teams. Briarwood still trying to find their defensive form a little bit after the loss of Garrett Witherington in that matchup. They gave up some big plays and weren't quite able to get the pressure that I really thought that they were able to get in that matchup that I saw in matchups like against Ramsey earlier on in the year. And just overall, the offense really lacked that sort of playmaking edge that I think that they not only found a little bit earlier in the season in that game against Ramsey, but they also rediscovered in the past few weeks, beating John Carroll Catholic by a lot, beating Hayden by a lot, but then you roll into last week against McAdory and then really struggle overall. Tyler, you were there with that matchup against McAdory. What did you see out of this Briarwood team overall? Do you think it was more of a letdown performance from them, or do you think that was just simply McAdory being a very good team?
I really don't know how to describe it, because you go on the road, you play in a very tough environment in McAdory, and it's just they looked stagnant. But also, I think that they were kind of getting ready for the playoffs. I really didn't get much insight for Coach Forrester there on what the plan was. But it doesn't take away from the fact that this team against the quality opponents, never mind the two blowout wins they had before McAdory, but against the quality opponents, they've really had to go to battle. And ever since the loss of Garrett Witherington, that has been a challenge. Like you've got to have the defensive penetration up front, and that's where they've really struggled. I think that's where they really struggled last week. They have a lot of injuries on the defensive side, and they're really going to have to come out against the Leeds team, who also has a lot of injuries, but cannot be overlooked.
Yeah, I think Leeds overall has shown itself to be very good within the past few weeks. Obviously, they're coming off a bye off of the end of the season, and they also lost to Pelham in their final non-region game, a game where the Panthers had to start freshman quarterback John Hampton and got the win in that matchup. But overall for Briarwood, they gave up 56 points last week against McAdory, one of the worst defensive performances of the season, and they had their worst offensive performance since the Ramsey game with just 13 points on the night. I do think that this Briarwood team very much has a chance to win it at home, but I do think, having seen this Leeds team in person, they need to stop those explosive plays on defense and then minimize the mistakes on the offensive side. In my opinion, a safe game is the best game for Briarwood. We haven't, like Tyler said, we haven't quite seen them rise to that level that we've seen them play against some of the better teams that they have against the lesser teams within their region play. And I think that's just because they haven't quite been able to put it together on both sides of the ball. I think overall, just simplify the game plan, make sure that you have the tools needed for success. Obviously, don't play predictable, because that's a problem against an opponent like Leeds that you've already seen before and literally have tape on. So Tyler, as we go to our pick today, which will be sponsored by 3D Air Services, what do you think that within this matchup is going to happen?
I think it's going to really be another dogfight. I think what we saw out of the first matchup in the regular season was that Briarwood kind of let their guard down. They let Leeds come back, the storm back, win that game in 1-point fashion. And you got to look at yourselves and think, what can we change from that game? Not only that game, but last week, in order to come out and get this win. Right now, I think Leeds cannot be overlooked. I think their quarterback, Sam Lawler, has a lot of talent in his arm. They've got Jordan Lockhart as their running back now, who's like the third string, because both their running backs are out, and he's played very well. And then Taylor Gator, their wide receiver. I just think their offensive performance cannot be overlooked, and right now I think Leeds still has a lot of potential to go out there and get a win. I think Jerry Hood's a very good coach, but I think Leeds does go on the road and gets the win in the first round.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. I don't really know how to trust Briarwood after its recent performances. I think it'll get out of bed and put in on a good performance on Friday night against their home fans. But overall, I just don't know with this team overall. They just haven't quite stepped it up over the past few weeks against the teams they need to in order for me to have confidence to pick him in this matchup. I think they'll keep it close, but I think that Leeds gets a couple bigger plays, kind of like we saw against Briarwood earlier on in the season, and that's going to give them the win in a close one. But if Briarwood plays to its full potential, it could very much be a good victory for the Briarwood Christian Lions. So it could be a good and fun matchup on Friday night as Briarwood takes on Leeds in the first round of the Class 5A playoffs. Well, the Helena Huskies are absolutely rolling at the absolute right time, winners of 4 straight going into the playoffs. They beat Tarrant in resounding fashion last week, as expected, and now they roll on the road into Bessemer City, an 8-1 Purple Tigers team, for the first round of the Class 6A playoffs. And this is really going to put all of that momentum to test, Tyler. Both of these teams have looked very solid throughout the entire season, but I'm curious to hear what you feel like separates these two teams as we roll into this matchup.
Well, I think it's really going to be about Helena's defense and their performance this week. This Bessemer City team overall has been very talented. They've been very tough to stop. I think you see that throughout their games. They have not given up more than 20 points except once this year, and that was in their and they gave up 28 points to Hueytown in that loss. I think right now for Helena, it's going to be capitalizing on any stops that they get, because we all know this Bessemer City team is not going to lay down and let Helena come on the road and win in their house. Yeah,
this is typically a Bessemer City team that's overall pretty solid. They haven't really quite been able to get to that next step overall, but they've got a lot of talented weapons on both sides of the ball. And I think especially like Tyler said, on the defense, they've been a very solid team as a whole this season. But Helena has also been incredibly solid on the defensive side. A little bit of focus issues probably played into that loss, into that win over Tarrant last week, where they weren't quite able to finish the job in the end as strong as they started. I know that was an emphasis for Richie Busby and his post-game media availability with Daniel Locke. But overall, the defense as a whole has just been made plays when it needs to. It hasn't quite been consistent. I look back to both the Helena and Calera and the Helena and Pelham games, and those were some games where they gave up some big plays throughout the game, especially within the first half. But this Jim Elgin coach defense just really knows what adjustments to make in the locker room, and they know how to get going within the second half to close it out as well. But the run game has also been incredibly solid. Dom Santiago with another incredible night for this team as well. Jacoby Studemeyer mixing in very well with the offense as well. Both of those two creating that tandem backfield that I think Helena has always prided itself on and is what has been carrying this team to success as a whole. But Tyler, as we move into our Oak Mountain Hearing Association pick, where you can go if you have any hearing loss or any tinnitus problems, make sure that you check them out at their new Pelham location, Oak Mountain Hearing Association, and go ahead and search them up as well if you need help. In that regard, Tyler, who do you think comes away with the win in this matchup between these two teams?
Well, I love Helena. I love that the fact that they've won on the 4 straight games has really propelled them when they were down and out in the beginning of the season. But I really think the difference in this game is going to be, like I said, that Bessemer City defense giving up just 12.8 points per game throughout this season. I think that's going to be really tough to move the ball. And I like Helena to make it close, but the Purple Tigers playing at home, they've got the ability to win these games. They haven't given up more than 20 except once. I think that's what propels Bessemer City to this win and ends Helena's season early.
So I'm going to go opposite with you in this one, and I've got some reasons for that. I think that Helena gets it done. I think they're more battle-tested as a team overall. They've played the more difficult schedule and gotten some good results against those teams as a whole. I look especially at that Moody game overall. That was kind of that tipping point that carried them through into Bessemer, not into Bessemer City against Benjamin Russell. Obviously, that little bit of a letdown against Oxford in the middle, but that was where really started to see a tipping point within this team to where they went on the road at Bessemer City, got a good result, and then they won 4 straight from there, beating Pelham, Calera, and Tarrant as well in dominant fashion to be able to get to this point now where they are the 3 seed coming out of Class 6A Region 3. But overall, the Bessemer City offense is kind of where I see a little bit of a weakness for this team. They're scoring just 20 points a game in those 3 games that they played recently against Northridge, McAdory, and Winona. Obviously, all 3 wins, but not very comfortable in that regard. And they're scoring just 29 points as a whole, but that includes games against teams like Paul Bryant, Brookwood, Woodlawn, and Centerpoint, none of which have done very well this season, to say the least. So I think those stats are a little bit inflated as well, and they're facing a defense in Helena that they probably haven't gotten a good look at since the McAdory game. I argue those 2 defenses now a little bit more comparable to where they were at the start of the season with the way that this Helena team has grown overall. I think they're going to find their offensive edge against this Bessemer City team. I think they picked their spots and they managed to get a good one in that regard. But I think this team managed to win a low-scoring matchup because I think this Helena defense comes out, has a massive game, one of its best games of the season, and that powers it to a win on the road for this team. So it's going to be a great matchup over there on the west side of Birmingham as Bessemer City takes on Helena, and a matchup that could really decide the fate of the Class 6A playoffs going forward. Well, the Pelham Panthers coming into the playoffs with just a 4-6 record overall, but this team has gotten some very good results within the last few weeks. I look at that matchup last week against Fort Payne, where they really go on the road and do some damage to the Wildcats. They nearly beat them, lost in some controversial fashion, but that comes after a win over Leeds in non-region play, where they're without their quarterback in Dylan Smith. He comes back last week, has a big performance against Fort Payne, and that has this team having a little bit of momentum as they go on the road to a 5-5 region champion Hueytown team that's pretty battle-tested in its own regard and should put up a pretty good fight overall. Tyler, with these 2 teams coming into this matchup, they look pretty similar overall. What do you think is the deciding factor within this matchup, especially with Pelham going on the road?
Well, I really think that Hueytown right now, Andrew, is an interesting case. They come in as the 1 seed in their region, but they're 5-5 overall. They went 5-1 in region. And so it just kind of really builds the question, like, okay, where is this Hueytown team against a team that they're really not that familiar with? They've lost their last two. I think right now Pelham's offense is very dangerous. Getting Dylan Smith back was big in that game against Fort Payne. Obviously, we saw Smith have a very productive game, especially to Marcus Arnold, man. 9 receptions, 176 yards, and a touchdown. He continues to be a star in this Pelham offense. I think where Ross Newton has this team right now, if their offense can go out and execute, they have the ability to win a big foot race against Hueytown, and I think that's what could propel them to a win on the road, but they have to be dialed in.
I think foot race is the key word between these two teams because Hueytown overall, they're scoring 32.9 points per game, and they're a very dangerous offensive team, but they're giving up 28.2 on the defensive side, and some of that is a product of their schedule that they're facing. One of their losses to Central by 16. That was their lone loss within region play. But then they also fell to Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa, Pinson Valley, Mountain Brook, and Clay Chalkville. 3 of those 4 teams that I ended with overall, I think are top 10 teams within their respective classifications, whether that be 7A or 6A. So a very, very difficult schedule for this team. That's kind of why it's sitting at 5-5 overall. Pelham, on the other hand, also playing a pretty difficult schedule, struggling in some of those matchups, but overall, I think they've looked good within the last few weeks. I think they've obviously they're scoring 21 points in each of their last 2 games against good defenses in Leeds and against Fort Payne. To be able to get some momentum going into this matchup, I think the offense is making the plays at the right time. They've got a diverse attack with Tristan Rutledge pacing the ball on the ground and then in the air, Dylan Smith especially being under center. That's really opening up a lot of things for this team, him being back a little bit ahead of where we expected. Tyler, as we move to our 3D air services pick, you'll want to make sure that you guys go out there with this chilly air coming in. Make sure that you tune up those heaters and those ACs before you hit the holiday season so you can be all warm and toasty. Going into the Christmas time, make sure you search them up, 3dairservices.com, for all of your HVAC needs. Tyler, who are you going, Pelham or Hueytown?
I'm going the Panthers. I think that the way Hueytown has played against the 9 region opponents this year really gives Pelham an advantage. I think they're playing some of their best football right now. I think Marcus Arnold's going to be too hard to stop. I think Ross Newton has this team where he wants. And let's remind people, this is only his first year at the helm of this Pelham program. I think he's way ahead of where anybody expected this. I think Pelham goes out on the road and gets a win against a good Hueytown team.
Yeah, 4-6 overall is a record that I think a lot of people would maybe turn their noses up at. But I think especially after what the Panthers struggled with last season, I think a lot of their gains have come not just in the win-loss column, but within the culture and the playmaking abilities of this team. They're doing great on both sides of the ball overall, but I think it's a defense that ends up deciding this one. I'm with you. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a shootout, and Pelham's going to bend a little bit probably before they break. But I don't think this team breaks. I think they get the stops when they need to. I think they force maybe a turnover or 2 against this Hueytown team and then capitalize on the offensive side to get the win on the road. It'd be a little bit of an upset with a 4 team beating a number 1 seed. But right now, I think these 2 teams are pretty even in a lot of regards, and it should make for a lot of a fun matchup out there in Hueytown. So if you're going out to that matchup, expect a really good one, but overall should be a fun playoff battle as the Pelham Panthers fight to make the second round of the playoffs. Well, the Shelby County Wildcats rolling into the playoffs in fine form. They beat an East Limestone team that was quite outmatched, and they did a very good job in that regard in putting that matchup away in Week 11. And now, coming off that, a bye week and a big win over Selma, they are now winners of 3 straight when you include that Montevallo game as well. And now they have a really tough road trip heading to the very east side of Alabama to take on Valley, 2 teams that I think are very similar on paper. But Tyler, I'm curious how you see both of these teams as we go into this first round matchup.
Well, the first thing I really worry about with the Shelby County team, and let me make this clear, I think they've played very well. They've won their last 3 very handily with East Limestone, Selma, and Montevallo, but they've lost 4 out of the 5 road games they played in this regular season, and they had that big 4-game road stretch there in the middle, and I worry about that going up against a very good Valley team who has given up less than 20 in 3 straight games. But you look at the Shelby County offense right now, Andrew, and that rushing attack last week was just on fire. And it made me really proud to say, I think it makes Zeb Ellison proud. I think where he has this team right now, they're very confident. But will that rushing attack be able to hold up against another good, very good Valley defense?
Yeah, overall, I do think that Ellison will be proud of that result last week. We've seen Shelby County have to go the air, partly because Ryan Sipes has been phenomenal throughout the season, and when he's getting the ball out to Dominic Woods, those two look like a dynamic pair and one that they haven't had within recent years. But it's been the run game that this team has really hung its hat on. So to see them have a good, diverse performance from guys like Devin Alexander, Tyson Duncan, and even Ryan Sipes, this team is looking very good on the ground. Ryan Hall chipping in some yards as well. They've got a lot of options that they can go to on the ground, and all those guys are making plays at the exact right time. But statistically, these two teams very, very, very similar. Offensively, they're both scoring exactly 29 points per game. Shelby County's defense is allowing just 22.6 points per game, just a hair ahead of where Valley is at 23.2 points per game. And Valley's played a very difficult schedule as well. Their 3 losses, all by 10 points or less, and those teams that they lost to: Central Clay County, Russell County, and Beauregard. 3 very, very good teams, 3 top 10 quality teams within their respective classifications. But then they got some wins against Glenwood and Elmore County to prove that they can still tangle in some of those matchups. And the one thing that I do want to key in on is that 6 of their 9 games have been decided by single digits. Shelby County has only played in 1 of those games. Only the Demopolis game was decided by 2 scores or less. A phenomenal achievement, especially when you consider where Demopolis was. But this team overall has either won big or lost big in pretty much all of its games. So we have to see whether this team can play well in the tight environment, which it's probably going to be on the road against a team that can put up some points and knows how to get it done in an environment like this. So, Tyler, what separates these two teams, and what do you think that this matchup goes to?
Well, I think where I really lean right now is the fact that Valley is at home. I think, like I said earlier, Shelby County has lost 4 of their 5 road games in the regular season. And I love where they're at from a mindset standpoint with the rushing attack having been so good against East Limestone. But I worry about that traveling. The defense travels, offense can be sometimes a little janky. And so we're looking at this game, and I think Valley being at home, that's where it really separates them. I think their defense is playing really well, and I would go and pick the Valley to win this game.
Yeah, I'd kind of go on the opposite side. I think Shelby County's offense continues its momentum from the past few weeks. I think they go ahead, get a couple of early plays, and then get that lead, and then they just have to play with that lead and defend it well throughout the entirety of the game. This is a Shelby County defense that is solid overall, but hasn't quite gotten to the level where it has been the last few seasons, where they were just stopping teams left and right and giving their offense a good chance to capitalize. That was what didn't happen a couple of seasons ago. It's what happened in 2024 and led to that huge success. But this year it's been a little bit up and down, especially against the quality opponents that they faced. So it's going to have to be a dogfight, and one that the Wildcats are going to have to set the tone in on the defensive side. But I just really like this offense right now. With the way the run game and the pass game are complementing each other, and with the way that both sides of the ball are able to get some big plays when needed to, I think that Shelby County able to pave the way to a victory on offense, and they're going to win a close game. I do like the Wildcats to win a close one here. Like I said, one that they haven't gotten a chance to win all season, but I think this is a game where you show the character and the culture of the Zeb Ellison coach team, and they're able to get a gritty win on the road. Should be an interesting matchup between 2 very similar teams, and 2 teams that are going to go to battle for a chance to face one of the top teams within Class 5A. Going to be an absolute fun battle out there on the east side of Alabama. The Vincent Yellow Jackets finished the regular season very, very strong. They're winners of 4 straight going into the playoffs, and the playoffs are where they're going to face some of their most difficult tests of the season. They're battling another 8-2 team in Falkville coming into this matchup, which will be at home for Vincent once again to start the postseason. Tyler, you've seen this Vincent team at different times of the season, but this really feels like a team that is hitting its stride right now at the absolute right time.
Well, I think the 2 losses that they suffered throughout the season were really wake-up calls. I've said that multiple times throughout this season on our pregame show that what Lucas Weatherford has in his head right now is that it's do or die. If throughout the season it's been a playoff mindset, it's like a win or go home, and I think that's where this Vincent team has really thrived throughout this season. I think they have the offensive firepower to really make things happen, especially against the good teams. But we did see them struggle a few weeks ago against Tuscaloosa Academy, and I worry about that here against, like we said, a Falkville team who is very good. They've only given up 20 or more points in one time in the stretch of their 6 straight wins, and that was when they gave up 22 to Cold Springs 2 weeks ago. I think where Vincent is, they're really going to have to capitalize on offense if they want to win this game.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of arguments on social media about whether Vincent has really played that difficult of a schedule, which I really push back on. I think those wins against Sulligent and Isabella, both very good, very quality wins. And obviously their only losses are 2 teams that are still in the mix for their respective state titles in Winterboro and Tuscaloosa Academy. But Falkville kind of the same way overall. They're scoring 25 points per game. Their best win was against Winston County by 28. And their losses are to very, very good teams overall. A Coosa Christian team that I think is going to win its state championship. That was lost by 26. And then just a tight loss to Southeastern, which has put it in the situation where it is right now, where it's going on the road to face Vincent. But these 2 teams have incredible defenses that have carried them to success throughout the season. Falkville giving up 15.1 points per game. Vincent giving up 16.2 points per game. I got to see this Jackets defense in person finally last week, and they just absolutely make plays. They swarm the ball like nobody else, and they're able to create turnovers when they get the opportunity to as well. 3 turnovers on the night from Vincent. Stuff that I really thought helped decide the momentum of the game against an outmatched Montevallo team, where they were able to kind of snowball momentum from those turnovers and really capitalize as a whole. Obviously, 2 of the interceptions got called back for a couple of blocking the back penalties, things that I think Weatherford is going to want to clean up, but capitalizing off of that fumble to be able to get some points there, I think was really good for this team. But overall, what gives this defensive battle? I think the offenses are going to decide this one. But Tyler, what do you think is going to be the deciding factor here?
Well, I also think the offenses who can break through that wall between these 2 teams. Jaden Roberts last week, man, 13 carries for 120 and 3 touchdowns. That was a really good performance. We've seen him kind of come out of his shell here in the second half of the season. I think that's going to be a key factor here. But I also think, like you said, can Vincent force some turnovers? I think if they can force some turnovers, they've really capitalized on that all season long. I think that's what could make the difference. You get a couple of turnovers, I think they can get a win against Falkville with that happening.
Yeah, points off turnovers are going to be really, really key here. I think this team does manage to capitalize and get a couple of good turnovers, but this offense is just clicking on another level right now. Like you said last week with Jaden Roberts, he's kind of coming out of his shell personality-wise as well, too. I heard him keep talking about a generational game last week against Montevallo. 3 touchdowns will do that to you. He did a very good job pacing the ground game in that regard. But this pass game as well, Lane Mims and Landon Archer, there's kind of been a little bit of a debate as to who's been the stronger quarterback, but I think they both work very well within this team. They both had really long passes to each other last week against Montevallo, which I think really showed a good unity between these 2 guys. They love each other from their times on the baseball field now over onto the football field. They're both great athletes who can get a lot done with their arms and with their legs, and I really, really like what they're building both in the pass game and in the run game, and I think it just comes together to get a very good offensive performance, one that helps them outpace Falkville as well. Tyler, do you feel the same way? Are you picking Vincent as well?
I'm picking Vincent. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game. I would estimate total points. You're looking at probably like 45, somewhere in that ballpark between these two squads. I think it's going to make the difference who can stand up in the fourth quarter at the end of the game when everybody's tired in this cold weather. But I think Vincent, with the way they're playing right now, that gets them the win. The way this offense is playing, the Yellow Jackets will move on.
Yeah, and that'll kind of herald back to that Isabella game from a couple weeks ago. I think Vincent has gotten a lot more resilient and a lot stronger over the course of the season. It's a team that loves to defy expectations, and I think that they know where they want to go within the playoffs, and that's to make history. They want to go deep, and they want to do what no Vincent team has ever done before, just to prove that they are the best team within school history. So I think they go out, take the first step in that regard, get it done at home in front of their fans against Falkville, setting themselves up for a really entertaining stretch where they could potentially make the quarterfinals if they go up north and beat Pisgah. But it's going to be a really fun battle here this week that the Jackets cannot overlook, but one that I think we both really like them against Falkville. And that brings us to our AISA and ACSC breakdown. And for the first time in quite some time, all three of our 8-man teams are in the playoffs this week. And for the first time in a very long time, two of them are facing each other. We're going to start out our week on Thursday night with Cornerstone and Coosa Valley in the first round of the Class A playoffs down there in the AISA. And then Evangel going to be going for all the gold in their conference, the Alabama Christian Sports Conference Championship against East Central, a team that they've already beaten in the regular season. Cornerstone and Coosa Valley have also faced off in the regular season. We're going to start there with the matchup between the Chargers and the Rebels, since it will take place on Thursday night. This was a matchup that Cornerstone won 60-36 in the regular season. Coosa Valley got a chance to show its offensive prowess within that matchup, but Cornerstone was just a step above them in this matchup. A rivalry battle. These two teams do not like each other, and that playoff atmosphere is going to be intense out there in Columbiana. Tyler, do you think that Cornerstone manages to get it done yet again against the Coosa Valley team that has all the momentum?
You know, they say it's hard to beat a team two times, but I think Cornerstone is still who they are. I think that rushing attack is really going to be difficult for Coosa Valley to stop. They're both coming off resounding offensive performances and resounding wins, but I think where Cornerstone is, they've just been too successful. And I think Coosa Valley has had a great season this year. Doesn't take away from anything they've done, but Cornerstone will come out here and get another win. I think another high-scoring game, Andrew.
Yeah, nothing to take away from Coosa Valley, especially a winning record for the first time since 2013. A huge accomplishment for Reese Donahue within this conference. But I'm with you. I think that Cornerstone is just a hair better on both sides of the ball, but especially on the defense. I think it's going to be another shootout with what Cornerstone has given up in the weeks past. I think their defense kind of is what it is at this point, and they know that they're going to have to outpace teams on the offensive side, and I think they do so here. I think they get a couple of stops on the defensive side, and they manage to pull away over the course of the game in another fantastic battle. It's a Coosa Valley team that's scoring 37 a game overall this season, but has 3 68-point games all since the Cornerstone loss. So they're playing their best football right now, albeit against a bit of a lighter schedule. And they put up a great fight against Macon East as well, putting up 30 points on them. So this cannot be a challenge that Cornerstone overlooks. That takes us over to Alabaster, where Evangel will face East Central for the second time this season. East Central pulling off the upset on Southern Christian last week, the preseason favorite in that division. Now East Central rolls into Alabaster after a 38-6 win for the Lightning in their regular season meeting. Do you think it comes out similarly, Tyler?
I think it does, but also I expect East Central to put up more of a fight, especially after that win against Southern Christian last week. I still look for a player like Eli Black to really run the table for Evangel. Winning this game 38-6 in the regular season, I think, really propels Evangel to where they're going. I think they have an opportunity on their hands that they cannot forget what's at stake. I just think this team's too talented. But like I said, we'll be closer, but Evangel will come out with a win because of Eli Black.
Yeah, this was only a couple weeks ago that Evangel got this victory. Both teams have played 2 matchups since then. Evangel just continued to look good. They scored 50 points last week against Lighthouse, and were up 30-8 at halftime before they let their foot off the brake a little bit and managed to let Lighthouse score a few points in that game. And then East Central getting that 34-28 win over Southern. But I just think Evangel with both of these two teams rolling, I think Evangel just maintains that dominant form that they have this season. This offense looks absolutely incredible, and the defense is getting the stops needed in the first half to set them up for success. I think that happens again. I think they repeat as ACSC champions, and they'll go into nationals next week, where they'll play 2 games in 48 hours, and it's going to be an absolute dogfight in both of those games. A close one in this regard would probably help them in terms of getting them another close game before they face those teams down at Panama City Beach. But I think this team would also love a comfortable win, get another state championship in the bag, and then roll down south with a fresh set of legs, ready to take on their biggest tests of the season. So it should be a fun one out in Alabaster and out in Columbiana. Hope you guys can get out and support some 8-man football as both of these teams look to advance in the playoffs. Well, that brings us to one of our most anticipated segments of the show every week, and once again is another filled pack of SCR Stars nominations. Tyler, gonna go ahead and start with you for your 2 stars of the week, and then I'm gonna go ahead and give my 2.
Well, I think first and foremost, Charlie Vaccarella, quarterback at Oak Mountain, man, finishing off his season, first season starting at quarterback against Chelsea, a 26-0 shutout win. 220 yards passing in that game, first off, really stands out to me, but also just as a whole, 300 all-purpose yards for Vaccarella, a guy who's known really to be a dual threat, has really come out of his shell over the course of this season. I think that's really propelled him, and that's what helped him in that win last week. 2 touchdowns as well in the air, and then 55 rushing yards. Vaccarella just really showed out in his last game of the season against a crosstown rival. Those teams don't like each other. Vaccarella really came out and showed who he was last week. And then Marcus Arnold, wide receiver at Pelham, 9 receptions for 176 yards and a touchdown in the 28-21 loss at Fort Payne. Marcus Arnold has really been a star for this team. He's making highlight plays like every week, Andrew. And it really just amazes me what this kid can do. His ability to go up and grab a ball one-on-one in the air. I think he's a big reason why Pelham has had a lot of its success this year offensively. And that's why he's my star of the week, man. He's just come out and really played ball. I think he's going to be a future talent one day.
Yeah, 2 good picks for you in your first time picking some SCR Stars of the week. I'm going to go with a couple of big ones as well. Starting off with a guy who's been a regular on this segment, Brock Bradley over at Spain Park. 290 yards and 4 touchdowns in a short day of work for him against Gardendale. Just another phenomenal performance through the air, and he gets it done to give himself a good lead going into the playoffs. And then Jaden Roberts, we talked about earlier in the show, he was feeling himself during the game, and that absolutely showed on the field. 13 carries for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns. The offense looked good in a lot of aspects overall over the course of the game, but they really got down the field quickly, thanks in part to big runs on the ground, and Jaden Roberts was just hitting his gaps all day long and then getting into the end zone with a few short touchdowns as well. So big shout out to him. He's our SCR Star of the week as well. And then we can't let you go without giving us a big slate of honorable mentions. We're starting at Oak Mountain, Marty Myricks. He goes for over 1,000 yards on the season, thanks to this night from him, 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. A really solid night from him to cap off a phenomenal career for the Oak Mountain Eagles. Career wide receiver Xavier Boone, the Eagles lost on the road at Stanhope Elmore last week, but he came away with 4 catches for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. You heard after the game Stanhope Elmore's coach kind of say it, this Career team plays it a bit like Madden with their deep balls, and that definitely showed with what Jordan Ward and Xavier Boone were able to do. That was a positive last week, and what kept them in the game for a little bit against Stanhope Elmore. And then Helena, 2 very, very good offensive performances from them. Davis Kelly going 3 catches for 116 yards. Nice and tidy. Big yardage on each catch. Made the most of a short workload. Dom Santiago taking 8 carries for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, short night of work for him, but he absolutely rolls against an outmatched Tarrant defense. And then Dylan Smith. We thought that he was potentially out for the season after that shoulder injury against Benjamin Russell, and it may not have been with a broken freaking neck like Kurt Angle won his gold medal with, but his performance last week, nothing short of phenomenal. 12 for 23 for 218 yards and 3 total touchdowns. A great night for him on the road that gave them a chance to go and win that game against Fort Payne. And then Mason McClure. No Brock Bradley without Mason McClure most nights. 2 touchdowns out of his 3 catches. Went for 154 yards as well. Big night from him in that regard. Shifting over to the defense now for a couple of guys. Caden Carroll, a forced fumble and a ton of tackles on the night against Montevallo. He absolutely showed out and made the plays that I expected him to make. He's really filled that linebacker role very well for this Vincent team. And then a couple other guys going over double-digit tackles as well. William Yoder leading Oak Mountain with 11 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Big night for him and the Eagles. And then Benji Augsburger making plays down the stretch, getting into space and getting some good stuff going. 15 total tackles out on the stat sheet for him last week against Fort Payne. Helped the defense stay in there against a very good Fort Payne side. And we can't close out the show without giving props to the best rushing performance of the season. That goes to Shelby County as a whole. 5 total backs scoring 5 total touchdowns, 1 each for Devin Alexander, Ryan Sipes, Tyson Duncan, Ethan Hall, and Caleb Blevins. Duncan, Alexander, and Sipes each going for over 100 yards, and as a total, 442 yards on the ground from this team in addition to its 5 touchdowns. That sounds like a 2024 Shelby County number. We'll see if that rolls into 2024 Shelby County success going into the postseason. So a big slate of regular season guys to close out that slate of our schedule for the Shelby County Stars of the Week segment. But once we get into the playoffs, it's all about whether you can make those performances count, and we'll see if we have some more SCR Stars of the Week to give out when the first round wraps up. Well, that's going to do it for this week of the Shelby County Football Show, the first time where Tyler and I get to host a taped show. It was a great time talking with Tyler throughout all the day today, and I think we've got a really good slate of matchups going into this week, but I can't let him go without getting his first ever bold prediction to close out this show. So Tyler, what you going with? What can we hold you on the record for next week?
I believe that in this Pelham Hueytown game, we're going to see a couple of defensive touchdowns go forth. And on top of that, I think that's the reason this game goes very high scoring. I think total between the two teams, Pelham and Hueytown are going to score a combined 67 points. We are going to go monster high. I think it's going to be an offensive shootout. One that I still think Pelham wins, but I think defensive touchdowns could be the reason. That's why Benji Augsburger was an honorable mention for us.
Yeah, that is a big total for a 6A playoff game, but if the defense steps up in that regard, I think they have a good shot of eclipsing that total against the Hueytown team that also likes to get up and down the field as well. So it could be a big night for Pelham on both sides of the ball. I'm going to go a little bit against the grain. I know I picked Leeds to beat Briarwood earlier in the show. I think the county goes undefeated this week. Obviously, Cornerstone plays Coosa Valley. We can wipe that a little bit because one county team is going to lose and one county team is going to advance there. I started the season with this prediction in week 1. It did not go in my favor. I'm going to go with it here. I think we have a big slate of second round matchups next week because the county goes ahead and gets it done across the board. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the Shelby County Football Show. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in, and a big shout out to our sponsors one more time: Wayne's Pest Control, 3D Air Services, Montevallo Main Street, and Oak Mount Hearing Association. Go and support those guys for the support that they've given us throughout the season. We're going to see you on both Thursday and Friday night. I will be out at Cornerstone as they take on Coosa Valley, and then we've got our full slate of action on Friday night. Tyler will be out at Thompson. Alec will be back in action over at Briarwood as they take on Leeds, and then I will be here at Spain Park for our game of the week in Spain Park, McAdory. All 3 of us will be on live as the Shelby County pregame show gives it to you live on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Follow us on each of those 3 platforms and make sure that you're locked in for when that pregame show goes live. We're going to have full in-person action across our 11-man slate. Vincent, Shelby County, as well as Helena and Pelham as well. Full coverage for you across the board. It's going to be a great night of high school football action and a competitive one as everybody battles to make the next round of the playoffs. So for Tyler Raley, my name is Andrew Simonson. Enjoy your week, everybody, and we'll see you Friday night on the Shelby County pregame show.